CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
It's our 6th year of the African Conference on African Philanthropy. Everywhere where we go, we take the opportunity to experience the place, to experience the culture, but to also showcase the country in which we are doing the conference in. But we also use the opportunity to speak to delegates, record them for our conversations on African philanthropy. So welcome to the Conversations on African Philanthropy on the Nile River, where we are shooting some of our episodes. And in the next 5 days or so, we'll be speaking to different delegates, different actors, activists, foundations, government officials, researchers, you name it all. You want to find anything to do with African philanthropy, visit our channel on YouTube and other platforms, our Conversations on African Philanthropy. Welcome to another exciting episode of our Conversations on African Philanthropy with me, Bhekinkosi Moyo. We are shooting this episode at the margins of the 6th African Philanthropy Conference in Cairo. I'm very excited to be joined by Dr. Shonali Banerjee, who is currently the Assistant Professor of International Development in the Department of Politics and International Studies, University of Warwick. Shonali, welcome.
Thank you so much, Becky. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much. And obviously, you and I have known each other prior to you switching from Cambridge to Warwick. But also, you've been part of the people that I would imagine you took part in the first episode of the academic dimension.
Yes.
Of the APC.
That's right.
And at that time, we didn't have the 2 days. It was just one session of the centers
that
were focusing on philanthropy. So maybe we can start there and talk a bit about the work that you did at the Center for Strategic Philanthropy in the University of Cambridge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me on. And it's really a pleasure to be here at APC 6 and see not only how the conference itself has evolved, but particularly the emphasis on the academic dimension and how it's now become a full 2-day event. You have dozens of academics here from all over the continent, really all over the world. And I think back in 2021, and 2022, I was lucky enough to participate, but it had to be online participation because of the COVID restrictions on travel. So it's been a pleasure, particularly the last 2 years, to be able to join in person, both in Zimbabwe last year and here in Cairo. And really a credit to all of you at CAPSI and the co-organizers for bringing together the academic research conversations around philanthropy and social investment and the practitioner side, because I don't know of many other conferences that allow this kind of integration of the two sides. And I think a lot of that is what is really related to the research that we did at the Cambridge Center for Strategic Philanthropy for many years, because I think I would consider us old friends at this point, not old friends and colleagues. So I mean, the research agenda that I helped launch at the Cambridge Center was based around systems change for philanthropy for development. And I know you remember that because you and colleagues at CAPSI were integrally involved in the production of that research agenda, particularly the African component. And we had so many African participants in the research agenda, many of whom are here at the conference. So it's been lovely to see them in person. And it's been great to see, how that systems change conversation has woven itself into the African Philanthropy Conference year on year, but also the broader kind of conversations internationally on how philanthropy and social investment needs to play a more concentrated role in systems change, because the topic of the day is about how the aid sector has really failed all of us, and specifically failed the majority world, but particularly Africa. And so I think how we from a philanthropy and social investment perspective tackle that crisis that is here with us now. It's not looming anymore. It's here. I think it's absolutely essential, and so I think that that brings us all together, both on the academic side and the practitioner side, really well.
Yeah. So I mean, what excites me about what you've just said is also the role that academics play in this space. So in the beginning, it was let's just have a session here, and then of course it has grown into almost like the foundation for the main conference. So a lot of people, so one of the patterns that I actually spoke about at the opening of the academic conference, that in the beginning it was seemed truly and maybe exclusively researchers and academics that attended probably the first two iterations of the academic conference. But we then saw a shift where practitioners actually come and spend the entire 5 days, the 2 days just listening to academics, and then the next 3 days now doing the main conference. So the moment as it stands, and our theme captures that, sustainable financing for development in the majority world provides opportunities and research prospects for academics.
Exactly.
And sitting where you sit, what do you see as some of the opportunities that this moment is providing for academics like yourself who are based in the global north but with an interest in emerging markets?
It's a great question, and I think it's been so useful. As someone who did two talks during the academic sessions and also chaired a panel, it was so brilliant to have a mixture of academics and also practitioners and people who call themselves practitioner academics, like so many of us do, in the room, because I don't think there's space for that in very many places. We either attend what we would call industry-focused conferences, or we attend academic conferences, but rarely do we get the opportunity to do both. And I think for research, it is absolutely essential. I'm based in the UK. Before I was at Cambridge University, now I'm at Warwick University. And research that generates real-world impact is a core focus of not only many of the universities in the UK, but also the UK government in terms of how they allocate research funding. They really want to see studies being done and research being done that has an application to sort of change and mobilize change in the real world. So for myself as a development studies academic, there are infinite opportunities when you actually get academics and practitioners in the room together, right? Because then you can make sure that the research questions that we are developing around what role philanthropic organizations have to play, what role collaborative movements have to play, how do social movements and political movements influence giving and social investment, all of these questions, we can make sure that the research that we are doing is actually relevant to what is happening on the ground and can be informed by and supported by what's happening on the ground. So we don't have that disconnect between the ivory towerism that has plagued academia for so long, where we do research, we ask the research questions, but it's completely disconnected from anything that's happening in the real world. We're trying to move away from that, or at least certainly I'm trying to move away from that, having come from a practice background myself. So I think the opportunities are infinite, and I really appreciate APC for providing this space for that.
Yeah. Talking of which, you and I were talking about some of your future projects, some of which are now confirmed, and one of those will be a collaboration that you been working on with CAPSI.
Yes.
Maybe we can talk a bit about what people should expect from that collaboration. What does it entail? What would be the main research areas?
Absolutely.
Maybe that's an opportunity for us to maybe present it in our next academic conference as well.
Yes, I hope so. I hope that means that in APC 7 we'll be able to share some initial findings. So yes, I'm really delighted that we've received a bit of seed funding to do the project that I think I've been conceiving for a while with your support and colleagues at CAPSI's support on the role specifically of philanthropy networks, and what brokering role, what type of convening role are these networks playing in a space that is evolving so fast, a space that is facing multiple funding crises from the top down? Where exactly do the various philanthropy networks situate themselves? So this is part of a broader study. I'm not only focused on Africa, but in terms of the African component, it is extremely interesting to me because we have so many philanthropy networks on the African continent, many of them Pan-African, most of whom are actually here this week, which is really great, and are obviously working together and collaborating with CAPSI and Wits Business School to make this conference such a success. But I'm really interested, in how these organizations and their membership networks, hundreds and hundreds of philanthropic organizations, how do they actually, what purpose do they serve? How are they serving their membership networks? How are they serving constituencies? What role do they see themselves playing going forward? And I really hope that the research that we do, I hope it's essential and collaborative, and I hope that the networks themselves will be willing to participate in the research and in the data collection, because I can only imagine that it will benefit them and their networks to have a kind of a rigorous academic study on the role of such organizations and how they're meeting the challenges of the current moment.
Yeah. So in the philanthropy ecosystem, at least in the continent here, you have networks that you have spoken about, but there's also another phenomenon of high net worth individuals and their philanthropy and their foundations. One of them is the Tony Elumelu Foundation that you have had the benefit of studying and writing a case study, which actually we are using to teach
I'm so happy.
for our class. But I thought since we have you, we could benefit with you just breaking down what the case study was about and some of the key findings or trends that you would want our audience to know about that particular case study. Of course, the case study does not cover everything about the foundation. There are specific elements that you were interested in. So maybe let's talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. I think I definitely want to thank both Tony Elumelu himself and the Tony Elumelu Foundation team for participating in the case study, and I'm delighted to hear that at CAPSI you're using the piece, and just so your audience knows, it was published open access on the Cambridge Judge Business School website. So this is, anyone can find it and download it. It's not behind a paywall or anything. So I hope many people will be, it will be of interest to many, and it will be of use. So the case study was mostly about the kind of model that the foundation has employed. So those who don't know about the Tony Elumelu Foundation, they are certainly one of the largest kind of private philanthropic foundations on the African continent. Tony Elumelu himself and his wife launched the foundation and they endowed it with $100 million USD, and they have recently renewed with another $100 million, obviously of their own funding. And over the years, they've been around for about 10 years in their current form. And really the case study is about their evolution from what was formerly a quite typical philanthropic organization. They were funding scholarships for promising African students to go and study abroad. What they realized is that actually that was contributing to some of the brain drain that we often talk about on the continent, because those promising students in many cases would stay abroad. So really what Tony Elumelu and their team realized is that maybe they need a way to shift their model to something that is more focused on creating prosperity on the African continent. So Tony Elumelu has this concept of Afrocapitalism, this idea that African progress and prosperity must be driven by Africans themselves. It can't be the result of an aid-dependent society. So, so they launched this entrepreneurship program, which has been going on for a decade now, where every year they launch a call for applications, essentially for seed funding. So what on face value might sound like a very typical incubator program, they have actually turned it almost into what they would call a mini MBA program. So even though they know for sure that all applicants cannot possibly get the seed funding, there simply is not enough seed funding, but they basically, they make it a staged approach where a large portion of the applicants at least get some access to their digital platform, learning tools, etc. Then they weed out another portion, and they allow those to get some business development support. And then, progressively the cohort gets smaller and smaller. Then they start getting one-to-one mentorship access, kind of peer-to-peer learning from alumni of the program. And then finally, a cohort of them will receive the seed funding. But by the time they get the seed funding, they will have basically finished a whole year-long course on how to make sure that that business that they're trying to start is a success. So they have entrepreneurs from all over the continent. It's been it's obviously been a phenomenally successful program. He's one of the only philanthropists absolutely laser focused on entrepreneurship. Something that we looked at as well is, there are still some research questions that I have as an academic that emerged from that case study around, what is the role of the state in also then, helping these young and aspiring entrepreneurs. It can't just be the private sector that supports them, and whether, what happens, as a next stage when Tony Elumelu decides to pass the foundation down, either to his children or to different executives. What happens when he is not there anymore, when the founder is not there. So a lot of interesting questions emerge. So I hope to keep up with them and see how things go.
Yeah. I mean, were there any implications after doing that work on other high net worth individuals, especially in the African continent? I mean, I know he has adopted a particular ideology or philosophy of Afro-capitalism, which others may not subscribe to or have not chosen as their model. But surely there probably are one or two things that you could see and say, these could also be applicable or utilized or be of advantage to other high net worth individuals in the continent.
Yeah, so I think, I haven't seen any evidence necessarily of other high net worth individuals launching an entrepreneurship program or an incubator program in the same way. However, Tony Elumelu, I know for sure, did launch a consortium for, for advocating to different African governments about the importance of investing in small and medium enterprises in their countries. And I know a lot of fellow business people and high net worth individuals have broadly been involved in that. So I think there's still some way to go, because a lot of the kind of elite philanthropists or high net worth philanthropists on the continent that we know of, many of them have kind of chosen a niche or a cause that they support, right? So we know what type of work Patrice Motsepe supports or Mo Ibrahim supports or Dangote supports. So I don't see them necessarily making a full pivot to entrepreneurship. But I do think that he has broadly had support for the program and for the broader kind of initiative of advocating for entrepreneurs on the continent.
And of course, this moment where the world is in such turmoil, the reimagination of aid and resource mobilization, I'm sure that this is a moment also where high net worth individuals are either under pressure to rethink how they do their own philanthropy, or they are being asked by others to fill the gap that has been created by the current moment. So it's a space that I would be keen to watch as we progress, and hopefully we get more research on some other high net worth individuals as well.
I hope so.
But what landed you in development studies?
What landed me in development studies?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I mean, I think it really goes back to my pre-academic
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
I grew up and was educated in the U.S. I did my bachelor's in international affairs and political science in Washington, D.C. And so I was always interested in, at that time, what we were calling the developing world.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no longer calling it that. But I always knew I was interested in working in the majority world,
Yeah.
in seeing, seeing through different development projects. So soon after I finished university, I did my first field posting in Morocco, so it's a pleasure to be back in North Africa for the first time in almost 15 years since I was in Morocco, working with grassroots nonprofit organizations. And then I spent several years working with different organizations in Southeast Asia, particularly with marginalized communities, refugees from Myanmar who are based in Thailand, marginalized communities in Cambodia. So that's really where my interest in development started. So then when I went to go and do my master's, the research that I really wanted to see on individual giving, using digital platforms on, in terms of crowdfunding and how NGOs mobilize funds that are not given from mainstream sources or not received from mainstream sources. That research was pretty nascent at that time. So, I'm happy that I was encouraged to do a PhD by a very kind and very supportive supervisor. And so I did the PhD, and that's how I found myself in academia. But I like to think that I still have a little bit of that practitioner academic focus in my work. So, which is why it's so nice to be surrounded here at APC by fellow practitioner academics.
Yeah. I actually see an increase in the fascination with this concept of pra-academics. Every conference and now and then I see many people who actually see themselves as pra-academics, and the majority of them are either in practice but also with a foot in academia, or they've had a big past in practice and they're now in academia, but they continue the association. So it's another track for me and others to just keep a tab on, because I see every time. In fact, there are even research studies now that are being produced on pra-academics.
Absolutely.
I also think I'm a pra-academic myself.
You 100%. You more certainly even more than me.
So I can take that. Yeah. So thank you so much, Shonali. I just thought it would be useful for us to just catch the little time that we have and just get to hear a bit about yourself, the work that you have done, but also where you are going. And that's my last question, really, around your research interests.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for asking that question, and I hope that the conversation has been interesting for the audience, and I wanted to say, anyone who is listening to this, please do reach out to me. I'm always looking for new research participants, new collaborators, particularly on this work that we hope to launch on the role of networks. I think I really am hoping that this research finds resonance in the field. I think one of the papers that I gave a few days ago with my co-author who's here, who I'm also married to coincidentally, is about the book that we just published with our colleague at Sussex University, Mikey Fechter, called Horizontal Development. And of course, when we wrote that book, we started writing the book 2.5 years ago. We didn't know the moment that it would be published in, and how we absolutely need to be looking at new forms of development, shifting power, as we've been talking about for many years, I think now, shifting power. So what I would like to see looking ahead is really thinking about what our space, what our sector, whether it's international development, whether it's philanthropy and social investment, or whatever Venn diagram between the two that you and I operate in, and many others. I want to see what that looks like in the future, right? Because if we are really to have to or be forcibly made to move beyond the mainstream aid sector or the mainstream aid models, I really am fascinated to see what emerges from the aftermath, because we've been talking for a long time about alternatives and what role philanthropy plays, and is it going to be impact investing and blended finance? Is the private sector going to save us? Just earlier this month, I was in Seville in Spain for the UN Financing for Development conference, and it really seemed like the perspective there was that the private sector must get involved. But at the same time, we can't absolve states from looking after their own people. So it will need to be a collaborative effort. So I look forward to hopefully seeing what role my work and my research can play in advancing particularly indigenous forms of knowledge. I hope decolonized forms of knowledge and practice, and helping to platform some of those into spaces like UK academic spaces, for example, or Western practice spaces where they have not always had a platform. Because I think there's no choice now but to find a path forward collectively. And it's awful the way that it has happened, but we also all need to find a way out of it. We can't just we can't just abandon the causes that we have been supporting for so long. So I'm hoping that we can, collectively ask CAPSI, all of the practitioner academics together, we can find a way to build a path forward and help our colleagues on the ground build a path forward.
Yeah. On that note, Shonali, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. That was Shonali Banerjee, Dr. Shonali Banerjee with the University of Warwick, joining us here at the margins of the 6th African Philanthropy Conference. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.